Alright, chummers. So, here is the story-based summary of Session 1 of the Havok campaign for Shadowrun 4th Edition 20th Anniversary. First off, why 4th Edition? Because I like it. I don't much like the changes in the new 5th Edition. And while 3rd Edition was great, and I fucking loved it, it was clunky. And these players are pretty new, and I haven't GM'd in probably a good 8 or 9 years. So it was a reintroduction for me and an introduction for them. And the introduction went, well, you'll see. Let me just move this off to the side. Move this here. Nah. Okay. Almost there. There we go. So the 3 players are as follows. A human occult investigator named Drake Orinia, call sign Canis. An orc street samurai named Ariwara Shinso, call sign Tiny. And a dwarf rigger named Rate Preston, call sign Presto, interrupting car. Together they form the group known as the Havok Group. This is their in-game designation. This group is run by an NPC, a gnome, known only as Relto. Now, if any of you are uber nerds, like I generally am, and follow the Myst series, you should be able to get the reference there. The location of the run, in fact, where they are based, is what is in our day known as Reno, Nevada. This is located in the Pueblo Corporate Council territory on the border of the PCC and the California Free States. I'll put up a short history post probably within the next week or so, but currently history doesn't matter, at least not for this session of the campaign. The session began in the Thirsty Bugbear pub on the northwest corner of Wells Avenue and Vassar Street, where our 3 anti-heroes enjoyed drinks and conversation. The gnome, Relto, came running into the pub to hand them a note that had scribbled, "Go downstairs," interrupting car. Or 2. Or 3. Little side note about the note. Well, anything that Relto writes down. First off, he's a gnome. Secondly, Pretty much everything he writes is scribbled. So it takes a basic perception check to even read the goddamn thing. They all pass their perception check. So Canis, who lives in the back of the pub, had knowledge about there being a storage shed in the back parking lot that didn't contain the normal shit. But he'd never been in there. So Canis tells the guys, hey, I think this means there could be a basement in the shed. So they leave the pub, go around back. The back of the parking lot is covered. That block is a corporate building, but that small pub and the parking lot behind it weren't purchased by this corporation. So whatever. Anyway, just note that the whole place is covered and well lit. So they go around back, they investigate the shed, and of course they find a staircase in the shed leading down to a full-blown rigger's workshop that had long been defunct. The bartender was a former rigger. So it had, drones, weapons, all that. None of the drones were fully operational. Some of them needed parts, because the bartender would take parts off of them to, fix things in the pub. Goddamn interrupting cars. But all the weapons in there worked just fine, so they divvied up the loot. On the floor of the first chamber of the basement was a magical dais, raised circular platform with Japanese writing around it. It was ancient Japanese, and it was pretty well worn out. Natural wear and tear, people walking on it, shit like that. Presto rolled a perception check and noticed a small gear sticking out of the northernmost edge of the dais. One of them, I forget who, noticed a sound coming from the parking lot upstairs after they checked it out and did a few other checks and shit like that. So they all went upstairs to investigate. Canis went first out the door. However, I personally think, and I just hope this doesn't turn into metagaming, that in a situation like this, the strongest should go first. So if you have a phys ad, put the phys ad out front. If you have a street Sammy, put the street Sammy out front. Don't put your weak fucking human out there. It's just hanging your dick out in the wind. Anyway, they noticed a female elf, cybered to the nines, and she was listening to the side of Presto's GMC Bulldog step van. So instead of trying to make contact or have a conversation or anything like that, Canis just casts stun bolt at her, misses her just barely, and puts a head-sized dent into the wall of the van. Presto wasn't too happy about this. It's my fucking van, what the hell? So that initiated combat. So on her initiative, she hopped on her Yamaha Growler and sped off. Combat over. This wasn't supposed to be a combat round anyway. So Tiny, Presto, and Canis jumped into the van and attempted to chase her. This is approximately 5:25 p.m. in Reno. So they go down Vassar Street straight to Virginia Street, which is the main drag of Reno. And they stall out. She makes the turn onto Virginia perfectly on her little dirt bike. The van, however, handles like a cow. So the ass end swings out. They skitter across the street. No one was hurt, thankfully. So they get going again, and they tear up Virginia Street. Again, no casualties. All driving checks and navigation checks were good. This is what kind of bothers me about this situation, is they couldn't turn for shit, but avoiding traffic? And so they continue on for a couple of miles up Virginia Street till they come to South Meadows Parkway, which is, if anyone watching this knows Reno, that's right next to Winco on the south end of town. She makes the quick left-right to get onto the freeway. The van barely makes it. The jerky motion of the van slams Tiny's head into the head-sized dent and actually evens it out. There's a crinkly, some crinkly around where the dent was, but now it's pretty well flattened. Thank you, Orc. So they get up there. She fails a perception check. So, whatever. She doesn't notice that they're behind her. She thinks she's in the clear. So they decide to stay back in traffic just to avoid being spotted. Because they figured, okay, she's on a dirt bike. We're in a van. She may not think this van can handle these turns. And really, it shouldn't. But it did, kind of. So they follow her up about 1.75 miles. And yes, I calculated all this shit. To exit 57B. Which, again, if anyone knows Reno, is an off-ramp that circles. It's about 1/10 of a mile diameter. Or not diameter. Yeah, diameter. Interrupting car. Interrupting car. Actually, interrupting ambulance. Okay. So, seeing as they're going at a decent speed, not like trying to do any acrobatics in this beast of a van, they make it off the off-ramp. Fine. They continued to follow her down, back down Virginia Street a little further south, through Pleasant Valley on Old 395. And they come to top of the hill separating Pleasant Valley and Washoe Valley. And right there's a turn that goes to Washoe City, now named Old Washoe. By this point, she starts to notice them, but I don't tell them, because she's not driving any more erratically than she was. Leading me to believe, and here's what separates me from a lot of people. I don't play to the plot points. I play to the characters, their psychology, and their emotions. So I could have plot railroaded them, you know, but I didn't. I don't. And they know this. So anyway, they travel about half a mile down to Old Washoe, and she pulls into what appears to be a scrapyard. As soon as she crosses the threshold to it, the gate slams shut. Presto ran an electronic, or some checks. I forgot what they are, but they're basically his rigging experience, and thinks, okay, she has some sort of RFID sensor on her bike, or RFID tag on her bike, and a sensor somewhere, or a sensor strip somewhere at the gate, so that as soon as the bike crosses, boom. They think, okay, let's go in. Perception check. Oh shit, there's turrets. So what do? They sit there for about 2 minutes and discuss. Fine, I don't care. They weren't close enough to pose a threat. The turrets weren't going to go off, because they were about, I'd say about 70, 80 yards away. So no big threat. So they notice that, that these turrets are there and that they're active and watching them. So they decide to note down the location to return later and then head back into town. They spend about 20 new yen on some tacos. Actually, Canis picked up the tab on that because he felt bad about putting a dent in Presto's van. So Canis bought tacos. They returned to the pub. After parking the van, they went into the pub and ordered a few drinks. Canis has a mild alcohol addiction, and Tiny has a mild stimulant addiction. To play the stimulants down a little bit, I said, stimulant could mean pretty much anything. Cigarette works in a pinch. But anyway, Canis got a beer, Presto got a beer, and Tiny, the orc street Sammy, got a pina colada. So the bartender asked about what the fuck just went on out there, and that he saw some cyber chick come into the lot and leave the lot in a hurry, and then followed by the van. Well, Canis and Presto explained what had happened while Tiny munched on some party mix. And afterwards, as they were about to go back out to the basement, the bartender stopped Canis and said, "Hey, someone left this for you," and handed Canis a box. The box was stainless steel and had 3 buttons on the back and a 1/4-inch audio port on one side. They finished their drinks, and Presto suggested that they check to see if the elf rigged something to the bottom of the van. So they go out there. Canis and Tiny notice nothing, of course, but Presto found a small metal box and announced its existence. Canis, without thought, knelt down and yanked the metal box out, which pulled a wire out and triggered something under the van that started blinking red and beeping. Well, of course, Presto and Canis backed off because they started to panic. They thought it was an explosive device, you know, sort of a fatal LoJack, if you will. Tiny, however, knowing that he could take and possibly survive explosive damage, ripped out the blinking, beeping device and held it out towards Presto, who flinched violently at the sight of it. It took him a second to calm down, and when he examined it, he determined it to be a listening device. Well, a bug. Fucking wind. And fucking interrupting car. So, Presto then, you know, determined that it was non-functional at this point, and that the beeping and the red light were just some sort of battery disconnect indicator. So he decides to examine the metal box that he got that Canis pulled from under the van. Canis, whatever. And after a perceptions check, notice that it is pretty much the same exact box as the one that the bartender handed Canis. Well, the box had the same audio jack, but only one button. Fine. You know, no big shit. So, after a little bit of discussion, they came to a decision that the two devices connected in some way. However, Canis caught a glimpse of something in the corner of his periphery and told the others he was going to go investigate. This must have pushed the boxes out of Presto's mind, because he temporarily forgot about them and focused on the now crinkled dent on the side of his van. So, Presto went into an extended test to fix the dent on his van. And Tiny decided to check his bike for a listening device. He's a street samurai, and an orc no less. At least he was playing to his character. That's what I like. So anyway, Canis entered the shed and failed an embarrassing amount of perception checks. He caught a glimpse of something, gone. Went over to where it was. Caught a glimpse of something, gone. Went over to where it was. Caught a glimpse of something, gone. Went over to where it was. Failed perception check. Failed perception check. Failed perception check. The fuck, the fuck, the fuck. So, Tiny went over after tipping his bike. He picked it up to look for or tried to pick it up to look for a listening device, and it tipped over. So he's got to fix his bike now. So he picks it back up, goes over to see what Candace is doing. Presto had no fucking idea. He was on the inside of the van trying to uncrinkle the dent. Fourth wall break. I admit that I was tempted to do a split party ambush right here. But I've been there as a player, and I've done it as a GM and a DM. And if they were more experienced, I would have. But to do that to some noobs, I'm not that dickish. Because a split party ambush is a dick move to begin with. So Candace finally asks Tiny to help him look for whatever the fuck this thing is that he keeps seeing. Now, I would honestly think Candace is hallucinating. There's nothing. Yeah, what Tiny did next. If only that was a there's nothing there, man. Yeah. Okay. So after Candace asks Tiny for help at the top of the stairs, Tiny, the orc street Sammy, picks Candace up and knocks him down the fucking stairs. Candace took a point of stun damage because he did decently well on an agility check, but still took a point of stun, which put him into -1 for stun injured. He was already slightly intoxicated, being a lightweight, so that put him up there. So after that, Presto finished the dent, didn't paint it. That way he could speed up his extended test. And he was wondering where the fuck everyone went. So he goes into the shed to see what's going on. They all talk, Candace explains, holy shit, fucking cars. Fucking ambulance. The fuck? Anyway, Candace explains to them, hey look, I keep seeing something, but every time I try to focus on it, it's not there. Presto laughs at him, of course. So they all, Tiny gets bored of this, sits over in his corner and polishes his guns, if you know what I mean. And actually, I do mean that literally. So Presto and Candace keep failing perception checks. It's so sad. But Tiny is the one that actually succeeded in his perception check, which is very slight. He noticed a breeze. A breeze blew across his orc face. Probably slightly ruffling the beard or slightly ruffling the fiber optic hair. Whatever. Hey, I guess that works, you get a light. you're also a fucking target in the dark. So Tiny goes over to see where the breeze came from. There's a little vent hole in the tile. So he breaks the tile, and lo and behold, a third box. This one's a little older, slightly discolored metal. Some etching where water, caused it to oxidize a little bit. He showed Presto. Presto immediately came to the conclusion, hey, this is another part of these. And so they discuss. They put them together. Again, with the one connector. Presto splices some audio cable together and creates a three-way, triangular connector. So, as soon as this happens, all the buttons light up red except for the older looking box, the floor box, which that button was blue. Without thinking, without considering, without putting it to a vote, Tiny goes, blue button. All wires eject. Nothing else happened. So, Presto immediately reconnects them. The colors are different. Ah, a clue, I think. So, after connecting them, let me see here, find my place again. After reconnecting them, all the lights turned green except for the middle of the bartender's box, which was red. Pressed it. Wires eject. At this point, this is only 2 tries in, they think maybe we're missing a part of the puzzle. Nah, fuck it, let's put them back together. All lights turn green, which Presto's rigging experience tells him all green means all systems go. All green, the boxes start to click. Canis, facing the first chamber of the basement, I'll post a map up too, sees a blue glow from the dais in the floor. There's some decorative etching on it, and the Japanese symbols glow blue. So they go over to it. Canis doesn't have skill in Japanese. If he does, it's very low. In fact, his natural speaking language is Arabic. However, Presto and Tiny are natural native Japanese speakers. So they both analyze it. Presto realizes that these are ancient symbols and won't be easy to translate. Canis rolled an Arcana check. I think Arcana check. Maybe I'm thinking D&D for this check here. Magical theory knowledge check, that's what it was. And comes to the conclusion that this is something that could help them out. Very specific, isn't it? His dice pool was 7. He rolled 3. I couldn't let him hang in the wind. 3 out of 7, you're gonna have some fucking knowledge of something. So, while they try to investigate this further, the gear, by the way, I didn't tell them this. They're gonna know now. The gear started turning. So, in fact, time is passing between now and the next session, so you'll notice. Ooh. If this wind is causing too much audio distortion, I'm also going to post this up as a PDF file. The transcript of most of this. So, while investigating this further, shiny thing appears again. Canis tries to look at it. Shiny thing disappears again. And I say shiny thing because they think it's shiny. But before he could go search for it again, and because 6 perception checks were failed by this point, there was a faint knocking at the door. So Tiny and Canis run up the stairs. And Tiny pulls his gun, leaves it at his side, as to not freak the person out if it's like a delivery person or the bartender. And Presto is still trying to translate the dais. Canis opens the door a little bit and sees a female battle mage, elf, standing in the far corner of the parking lot area. She didn't make a move. She didn't say anything. She just looked at Canis. So he asks, "Are you friend or foe?" Okay. Any experienced RPer knows that elves of any universe, any system, are somewhat noble. And as such, expect to be greeted as such, greeted respectfully, with at least a bow or a namaste. So she felt slightly insulted that, you know, he didn't greet her in this manner, so she laughs at him. Tiny asks if she has cookies. So instead of trying to apologize, and instead of trying to reconcile this perceived disrespect, Canis casts Stunbolt again. Misses again. Go figure. Puts another dent in something. It was the brick wall behind her. And this was a simple action, so he used his next simple action to run the fuck over and get behind a wall. Coward. He is human, and she is elf, and she is obviously battle mage. So at this point, Presto runs up the stairs and gets up, you know, behind the door. By this point, the door is fully open. Tiny takes a shot at her with his Eris Predator. This causes a massive sucking chest wound. It injures her for quite a bit and causes, I think it was a damage of 7p, 7 physical, which causes an injury modifier of 2. So she reels from it. She's still standing, and she's pissed. So her turn comes up. She casts Mana Bolt at Tiny. who's now the only target in her line of sight, and she missed. Really a bad day to roll spells today. And that was all she really did. She was staggered, which took a simple action. So Presto leans out of the door, gets a look at approximately where she is, leans back, pulls out his rifle, sticks it around the corner, and takes one blind shot. One blind shot. That is a modifier of -4 to your dice pool. And makes chunky salsa out of her head. Now, Candace's reasoning, his player told me, was he wanted to knock her out, restrain her, and interrogate her. Tiny, being orc, thought, threat. I'm paraphrasing it best. And so he takes his shot. Presto doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He just heard a spell being cast and missed. A shot fired, a woman scream, a spell being cast and missed. So he looks, he sees woman bleeding. He sees that she's angry. Perceived threat. Fine. I didn't actually intend this to be like a fatal encounter. I thought she was, gonna take one more shot and run the fuck away. Drop some loot behind or something, say her katana slips off, whatever. Nope, chunky salsa. Comm link, gone. All the software with it, gone. And the bullet lodges firmly into the brick wall behind her head. Well, what was her head at one point. So Candace starts looting the body and divvies up the loot, essentially. A light pistol, I think it was a Yamaha, went to Presto, along with its ammunition. A lined armor jacket was found, and Candace sold it to help pay Presto back for damages to the van. Her katana went to Tiny, and a fake sin with a level of 3, 250 new yen, and a note with the location of a cult compound went to Canis. If you remember, he's an occult investigator. After this, a bartender comes out, starts fucking yelling at him. What the fuck is all this noise? What the fuck is this? There's chunky salsa over my wall. There's a body in my parking garage. Ah! And Presto forks out money to, repair the wall and basically buys a round for the bar. After a little bit of discussion and some cleanup, the guys decide, by the use of Candace's knowledge of the area, to dump the mage's body in the Sparks Marina. And that was the end of the session. So, total ending karma. This is where I do the stats recap. Well, no stats were changed. This is their first session, so they didn't have any karma to buy stat improvements with. So total ending karma, Canis ended up with 18, Tiny ended up with 18, Presto ended up with 20. 20 is enough to improve a basic skill or basic attribute, or possibly get an advantage. Total ending New Yen. Canis ended up with 430, Tiny ended up with 650, and Presto ended up with 900. In the off time, storyline flows. Presto is going to work on fixing the drones in the workshop. However, it didn't go completely according to plan, simply because the bartender used, like I said, some parts to fix some shit in the bar. And fucking interrupting car. And paychecks were distributed by Relto, which awards everyone 1,500 New Yen. That's it. That is the end of the recap for session 1, October 11th, 2014. We started at 7 p.m. We started at 5 p.m. My bad. Let me edit that. It had a food break at 7 p.m., returned at 7:45, and ended the session at 9:15 p.m. Everything was a little slow going because, again, you know, new people learning the system. The players of Presto and Tiny had some D&D experience, and I'm not used to the new system. Plus, I'm using Chummer to track all the, you know, the damage, the New Yen, the karma, inventories, you know, NPCs, shit like that. So I'm still trying to get used to the new system. So I'm pretty sure the next session, which is going to be this Saturday, the 18th at 5 p.m. I'm quite sure the next one will be more eventful because they're in the off time. The guys are going to talk about, you know, group tactics. They're going to practice, you know, throwing rolls and, you know, shit like that. And I'm going to post a short video in a bit after this one, explaining, you know, the differences in the systems between Shadowrun and D&D. Because if you don't know and you're interested in Shadowrun, this will help. Trust me. So that's it for me. Havok, your humble GM. And thanks for watching. See you guys later.